Okay, so here we are, another video about Japan. So this one is one I've promised to make for quite a long time now. It's the things I like about Japan. So in the description, you have to click on another link that takes you to another video where I kind of ramble on and on about bad things about Japan, things I don't like. And that's while I was there, so I was sort of in the midst of it, and it was sort of like in the moment observations at the time. Now it's been 4 months or so since I returned from Japan, and I can honestly say I think about it every day. I'm kind of obsessed with it at this point. There is a lot that's been built up in my head about it, but overall, I really miss it. There's a lot of nice things about it, despite all the bad things I said about it in the other video. So I thought, this video is a long time coming. Good things about Japan. Yeah, and there's a lot of good things, but these are the things that I thought about first that really stand out. So I've also listed them in the description if you don't want to sit through my whole video. But I'll try to make this a bit faster than my other video, which I just rambled on and on. Number one, well, let me list them off first, and then we can get to it. So, one, pleasant people. Number two, healthy people. Number three, fashion. Four, food. Number five, fast internet. Six, history and culture. Seven, safety and honesty. Eight, facilities for the disabled. It's kind of an unusual one. Number nine, appreciation of nature. Number 10, festivals. Number 11, public transportation. And I was going to add another one on here, but I forgot. There's a lot of good things about Japan. There's things I'm sure I'll miss that I have enjoyed. So this is kind of just skimming the surface, so to speak. And then if you ask me, like, what do I like about certain cities? What do I like about Kyoto? That delves into something altogether different, maybe. Number one, the thing that really stands out more than anything is pleasant people. It's just a nice people. Nice people. So it's not altogether true that they're all appearances. Of course, I know that sometimes they have a tendency to be two-faced, and we all do, really. And I'm sure that more towards tourists or foreigners, they're more friendly. So they really show you sort of their best side. But they are pleasant to each other. I mean, they have a culture that just works for the harmony of everyone. Sort of working not to rub each other the wrong way. And, it's a crowded society. It's Tokyo and Kyoto. Those are busy cities, in parts of Kyoto especially. Those are busy cities, and so people do get in each other's way, but it's accidental, and they're very nice about it. They say sorry, sumimasen, or excuse me. Yeah, quite a difference from here. So people here are, I think, and when I say here, I mean in the United States. People here are generally pleasant, but I don't know. I don't want to put a percentage onto it, but there is a fair amount of people who are unpleasant, who are altogether unpleasant. And sort of representative example of that is, I think it was my first couple weeks back in the States, and I was started a new job contracting, the one I'm working at now still, and I was taking public transportation into San Francisco on what they call the BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit. And so there's the BART, BART is interesting. It's kind of a dirty, rundown system, but it seems to work. It seems to be generally reliable. But there's, two seats on each side. So I happened to be on the seat by the window, and there was a lady sitting next to me, and I wanted to get off before my stop actually arrived, so I would have time to make it to the door. And I politely asked, excuse me. And the lady just didn't budge, and I knew she heard me, so I asked again, very politely, excuse me, just very low tones, being generally pleasant as I could be, and she just freaked out. Basically, she's like, oh my gosh. Well, I forget exactly what she said, but she made a big deal about, wow, can't you wait till the train stops? And like she just didn't want to get. I mean, she didn't want to get out of my way. When I was asking pleasantly, and um, I think that was reasonable that I wanted to get out before my stop, so I didn't have to jump over and rush towards the door or make her rush and get over. I think that was a reasonable request, and people who just have a tendency to get on each other's nerves and freak out in public, and that's something that's kind of uncalled for in Japan. That's something that is rare. I'm sure it does happen, but it's something that's rare, that they sort of work so that doesn't happen. Basically, like public freaking out or people just going off on complete strangers is kind of unheard of, and that's the thing, really. It's just I'm a stranger to all these people around here, and that's another thing about the individualism versus the group mentality. So there are good things about the group mentality, and that's it. They're pleasant people, and they work towards the harmony of the people. They don't want to disturb the harmony. That's my impression. So you might have a different one, but that's the one I came away with after a couple months there. In Kyoto particularly, where I spent most of my time, and I really enjoyed it. Number 2, healthy people. The Japanese really take good care of themselves. They eat right, and they exercise, and they walk around. One of the things I have on here later is public transportation. That certainly helps when you don't need to take a car from place to place. Of course, that's not true in sort of smaller towns and more remote villages. You kind of have to have a car to get around there. In the big cities like Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, certainly you can get around by just walking around. And, that's good for you. I must have lost 30 or 40 pounds when I was there just walking around, and having like a kind of restricted diet because I was saving some money. But mostly walking around, it's very healthy. So people there are very healthy. They take good care of themselves. And that sort of leads into number 3, fashion. They take good care of themselves, and they want to look good, and it's important. I think we've sort of downplayed it here in the U.S. We've sort of said, "Oh, it's what's on the inside that really matters. Forget about the outside." Really, that's certainly true, right? But sort of the whole person is the physical and the mental and what's inside. And certainly to take care of your outer appearance and to take care of yourself is a big thing. And one of that is fashion, that you gotta look good. And people look good, especially in Tokyo. People dress up. They look pretty dang good, and the girls are pretty cute, and the guys are suits. There's a lot of suits, but yeah, people dress up. People look nicer. I like to compare it to sort of like the 1950s or so. People would generally dress up more, not be such a slob. Like, well, I guess I'm not too bad, but they would take care of their appearance. Nowadays, sort of people don't really care. Wear a t-shirt to work, which I've done a lot. I used to work at a company that sort of encouraged that even, and there's a certain nicety about that, but I think there's a nicety about dressing up and wanting to look your best, even if it's just for appearance sake. I think there's a nice thing about that. I like that. I like the dressing up of it. Maybe not every day. Maybe it's good to take some days off, but I do generally like when people want to put their best foot forward in appearance and in character. Number 4, food. Food is good. So I admit I'm not especially a foodie. I do like food, but there is a lot of good food. Of course, sushi and sashimi and all sorts of weird dishes like natto, which is not nachos, but natto, fermented soybeans, which is kind of like a spider webby type sticky, gooey texture. It's kind of gross, but extremely, extremely healthy. And yeah, the food is just generally good. They do have Western influence, for better or worse. So they have like burger places, and they got a KFC and McDonald's, of course. But you can go to a lot of places that have good, healthy, traditional foods. I did sort of get turned on to a food called soba there, which is sort of like um, what is it? Wheat noodles. Lots of different types of noodles, but these were pretty good. And it was summertime, so they served them cold actually, and you got them cold and you dip them into a little sauce. And they have different sauces for all sorts of things. It's not just one soy sauce, right? They have a sauce for all sorts of different dishes, and they all have different names, and I can't keep them track in my head. But the soba is quite good. I think I wrote in my travel blog that there's a funny dish called oyaku don. Is that right? It's basically father child bowl, rice bowl, or parent child rice bowl. It's basically chicken rice bowl with an egg on top, kind of like a boiled egg, sort of on top of everything. And the egg is the child, and the chicken is the parent. It's kind of messed up, but kind of clever. Kitsune udon. It's like fox udon, because not theoretically, but more of a legend. Foxes like like udon for some reason, or the stuff that you put on top of the udon. Didn't really get that, but I like that. All sorts of good foods to try out. So that food is definitely a big plus about Japan. Number 5 is fast internet. They do have quite fast internet, although I've heard South Korea has a bit faster internet. Actually, the internet at my guest house was average, I think, but generally they have fast internet. The place that I really noticed is I had a little Wi-Fi or MiFi transmitter to give me Wi-Fi wherever I was in Japan, and it was quite fast. I used that as my main internet source, basically, and that was running off of the 3G lines there. I actually ran some speed tests that test against my server in California, and it was actually pretty dang impressive. It was actually faster than AT&T in San Francisco, which is just really terrible. And just going all the way across the ocean and coming back, it's still faster than AT&T in some parts of San Francisco. Fast internet is definitely good. Number 6 is a huge one: history and culture, and Kyoto is kind of the hub of that. I love that. I love that there's so many temples, so much history there, so much to walk around to see and explore, and it really encourages walking around the city, which is a good thing, and it helps you. I mean, you kind of lose something if you just take the bus everywhere, maybe, or just take a car or cab everywhere. Kind of lose a part of the city. Kyoto is so packed full of stuff, it's ridiculous. That you can walk from one part of the city to the other, past so many temples, so many things that weren't on your map, that it's just like, and not everything has English signs. Actually, they're pretty consistent about it. The signs are in English, Japanese, and Chinese. So it's kind of like a Rosetta Stone you see every time in front of in front of the real important places. And the city is so packed full of them. It's ridiculous, and it's really nice. I really miss that. Being in a state California, that's so new. The oldest thing we have here are really like Indian, or should I say Native American petroglyphs. The writings on the rocks out in the desert, and then maybe a little more recent, the missions going all up and down the California coast. Which most of the cities are named after, like San Jose, San Francisco, things like that. The mission culture is kind of cool, but we don't really have, we haven't been here long enough to establish that sort of history, and I don't really know if we will. I don't know if we have enough of a cultural identity to be able to establish things like that. I'm not quite sure. I guess we do have things like Disneyland and things like that, but I don't know. It's quite different. The good old culture and everything. It's something to be matched. It's something to be envied. I realize I'm going long again, but here we go. Here's number 7, safety and honesty. This is quite nice. Japan, and I think generally Asia, or parts of Asia at least, are pretty safe. I have no worries about going out and just enjoying myself at night. There's so many people else walking around at night too. It's the thing that you just, I mean, even if you're going in the middle of the night or whatever, you're still gonna be safe. It's just a generally safe place. So there's a misconception that there is like no crime in Japan. That is certain outright falsity. Or that there's like no looting after the tsunami. There was certainly looting, and there's a certain amount of that that's covered up by the government to give the impression that it didn't actually happen. It did happen, but maybe I would say it would be fair to say that it wouldn't be the extent of looting that there would be, such as in the U.S. or places like when Katrina happened or something like that. There is a general enormous amount of honesty in the culture, and they're very prideful about that. And maybe prideful is not the right word for it, but there's a nice little tradition of leaving lost belongings, sort of by the sidewalk. I've seen it. I saw it so many times when I was there. I tried to take a picture every time I saw it, whether it was like an umbrella that was propped up not precariously, an umbrella that was propped up just perfectly on the sidewalk. Someone had found it and sort of left it there, saying, whoever backtracked their steps was trying to find their lost umbrella would be able to find it. People lose the little trinkets and things and all sorts of little things. I saw scarves, gloves, just things that were just sitting on the side. And I don't think that people lost them. I mean, if it was people did lose them, but I don't think they left them in that spot necessarily. I think people might have found them on the ground, put them off to the side. In some cases, these little trinkets were sort of taped up to boards, sort of saying, hey, you lost your thing here, and come and get it. That is really awesome. I really like that about the culture. Unfortunately, the U.S. is too opportunistic. People do return things to the lost and found, but if people were to leave things out and there were good things, they would be gone. People take advantage. People definitely take advantage in the U.S. There's no doubt about that. If there's no repercussions and if it's a good thing and it's a desirable thing, they take it and it's theirs. They figure, well, it's mine now. And that's the attitude of the U.S., and I hate that. I hate that. Japan is the exact opposite. They say, obviously this is not mine, but I found it, so I'm going to put it in a place where the rightful owner can find it. And you get in the spirit of that when you're there. You kind of have to if you want to be a part of the culture, or if you want to feel like you're a part of what's going on. Even though I know I'll never be, but the closest I can come to it is, I actually saw some money. It was like the equivalent of like $10. I could have bought like a lunch with it, but whatever. But it was just flying around in the wind. I took it, grabbed it, stuck it up on the board where I found it, so it would be sort of nestled in there. I don't know what happened to it. Maybe someone was opportunistic and grabbed it, or maybe the rightful owner found it. I don't know what they do with those lost things, really. But in general, yeah, they're a very honest culture. I've heard of other cases where some people forgot their change, or they were going out the door, and in some cases, they chased them down. The cashier chased them down after they had already left and gone outside of the store, and they just wanted to make things right. That's part of that's part of the awesomeness of the culture, and that goes along with the pleasant people and wanting to make things work in harmony. Sort of going the extra length to do what is right and to restore a person's change, no matter how much. That restores the harmony, and that sort of maintains the harmony, and that's awesome. Number 8 is something you might not find in a lot of things people rave about Japan. Facilities for the disabled. I was quite surprised. There's actually a lot of braille, like handicapped access and things like that. They've obviously, I don't know what, through some influence in their culture, maybe their own politicians, they've actually really brought most of the the big areas of Japan up to speed in terms of accessibility. Very impressive there. Very, very happy to see that. Like in every subway, every ticket booth there was like Braille on there. In some cases, there was Braille and a subway map in Japanese and no English, but there was at least Braille. And it was Braille, I guess, in Japanese. I don't know how that works out, but that's awesome. I really like that. I was quite surprised by that, I admit, and yeah, I appreciate that. Even though I'm not blind, I don't use any of those. I'm not in a wheelchair, not yet anyway. But I really appreciate that. Number 9 is awesome. Appreciation of nature. This is something. There's a fair amount of people who appreciate nature here. People really love to go on hikes in the mountains around here. People do take in a lot of nature in the U.S. I admit, especially in different parts of the U.S. where it's more nature-y, probably. There's a lot of hiking. People like it, but in Japan, people do the same thing. They go on hikes. Sort of Mount Fuji is flooded with so many people going up and down all the time that if you go during the peak season, it's just like jam-packed full of people. So I've heard there's a lot of appreciation of that, but it's more than that. It's a little more than that. It's going to the extent where they're just going along their day and sort of walking along and sort of smelling the different scents in the air, smelling the flowers or the interesting scents or things like that, things that they pick up on that I wouldn't necessarily pick up on, and maybe because I hadn't noticed it before, or sounds or just little curiosities, little things that they really appreciate. There's like a path by the guest house. It's called the Philosopher's Path. Is it Tetsugaku no Michi, Way of the Philosopher, or Path of the Philosopher? It's Tetsugaku? I'm not sure. You have to look it up. The Path of Philosophy, as it's called in English. A lot of people taking that in, appreciating the sights and sounds there. The cool thing about summer, there are fireflies there, and I heard people saying these words I didn't understand, but they were saying beautiful at the time. They really loved that. They love the fireflies. People love them here too, I know. There's not a lot of fireflies in California. Actually, there are some by some streams. You can look it up, but I think that's more of a thing out in the east of the U.S. I think people appreciate them there too, but I think people go the extra mile in Japan to sort of appreciate the sights and sounds, especially cherry blossoms and fall leaves. The fall leaves, which are all red, beautiful reds, people really take those in. Whereas here, I don't know if it's that much of a thing other than people notice, but they don't sort of go out of their way and travel to places. Well, that's not... I don't know. I'm kind of doubting myself now because we do have cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C., and I think people go out there to go see them. So I think there's a fair amount of that. People certainly appreciate nature, and I like that. So number 10 is another rare thing. Festivals. We do have some festivals and parades here in the U.S., but festivals in Japan are quite different. They're in a lot of cases they're millennia they're millennia old, basically, traditions, and there's so many of them all throughout Japan that it's very likely that you'll run into one on your trip there, especially if you go during a popular season like cherry blossom season. You probably go to Kyoto and they're doing the special dance. That's not really Matsuri per se. Like Matsuri is festival, but it's special events like that. It's just jam-packed full of culture. The only thing I compare it to is in the U.S. maybe we have like Thanksgiving and maybe like Christmas, and I don't know what we do. I guess different cities have traditions, but I don't really know. Or it's kind of like Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade or like the Rose Parade. And I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of like Rose Parade or something, but it just feels different. It feels more genuine, more historical, just different feel. But I really like festivals. Okay, I better finish this up. My battery actually ran out. I had to change it in my camera. But I think I was saying public transportation is the last thing. Is number 11. which I could think of anyway. I should have moved this up in the list probably, because public transportation is quite awesome in Japan, as you probably know. The high-speed rail, the Shinkansen, which connects the big cities together. That's what you would take if you wanted to go from Tokyo to Kyoto or Kyoto to Hiroshima or anywhere else between those cities. Definitely take the high-speed rail. It's a nice experience. It is expensive. Cheaper to take the night bus or something like that, but it's a nice experience. But within cities themselves, say from point A to B within Tokyo or Kyoto, you would probably take the subway or a train or something like that. Where I stayed a lot of the time was in Kyoto. Unfortunately, the subway and the train system was kind of inconvenient to get around. There was kind of like one path, especially for the subway. There's like one path going north-south and one east-west, and that was it. And it didn't really take you to, necessarily all the sites you wanted to see. So for Kyoto, I wouldn't really recommend that. I would recommend just taking the bus and getting off on the bus. So that could be improved there. It's still a lot better, though, I think, than U.S. cities, especially maybe because I grew up in LA and the public transportation is so terrible there, or should I say lack thereof of public transportation. It's quite nice in Japan. It's nice to be able to hop on the train and then walk to wherever you want to go. And as I said before, those sort of relate to other things. Like I said before, that's why people are healthy, probably because they do a lot of walking. They're not sitting in their cars, all the time. There are cars. There's a lot of cars, a fair number of cars in Kyoto and in those cities too. But I get the impression most people make their way around on foot, or I should say in Kyoto, actually on bike a lot of the time too. Biking Kyoto is probably the most economical way to get around and the healthiest way. You just got to be careful of the cars. I got kind of freaked out. I did it once. It was at night, and I was following the friends at the guest house, but I hadn't ridden a bike in so long, and it's pretty sad. I felt like I was going to fall down and crash into a car or something. I don't know. I made it, but it was fun anyway. Yeah, biking is a good way to get around. I think Osaka has a fair amount of that too. Although I think there are a lot of accidents, especially with pedestrians. So I don't know what they're gonna do about that. But yeah, that's something that's probably unique to those cities over there. I don't think there's a lot of that in Tokyo. Although I could be wrong. I don't know Tokyo that well. As I said before, I think I had another good point about Japan to list, but I forgot it. But yeah, those are the things that really strike me as the biggest things. The things I miss about Japan, the things I really like. Did I say fashion? I should say I like the girls there. I should be honest about that. But that kind of combines some other categories, that they're healthy. The girls take care of their looks. They're healthy. They're reasonably fashionable. Although there's less of that in Kyoto, which is kind of nice because Kyoto's a little more laid back, a little bit different, definitely different dress style. People don't all go out with the tights and the leg fashion and things like that, which I like. But you can go to Tokyo for that if you like that. Yeah, I like the girls there. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's about it. Oh, yeah, there's all sorts of little things. I like the stamps that you get at the temples, that are more supposed to be. Well, there's stamps, and then there's the sort of things that they write out for you, which are more significant, sort of part of a rite of passage of going on a pilgrimage, per se. That's something different. I like those things. I like a lot of little things about Japan. So too many to go into one video that's already too long. So number 12, I remember it now. Or is this number 13, 14, 15? I'll close with this because it's a pleasant thought. and it's something maybe we can do to improve our own society in the U.S. And I'll just relate this through a little story. Basically, it's okay. It was in Kyoto. Kyoto has a fantastic sort of, should I say nightlife? No, nightlife is not the right word. It has a fantastic river going through the city, and along the river, usually like lovers and couples are paired up and sort of leave a nice amount of distance between themselves on the banks of this river, which is the Kamogawa, or Duck River, Kamogawa. But just sitting down there and taking it in, just relaxing for a while, you hear a lot of people who go by, and you hear a lot of conversations. Of course, since I don't know Japanese, I couldn't understand what was going on, but most people going by sounded rather pleasant, and I could tell they weren't fighting with each other, or they were having a good time. They were talking nicely to each other. It might just be the general pleasant tone of the language, but there was no one who was sort of berating each other or going off on each other. For one exception, two girls going by who had, I don't know, I should say American or Canadian accents, and they were bitching and they were talking about, and they were just like, oh gosh, they were just like going off on something about, oh, I have to bring my effing suitcase all the way from Osaka. And it was just something that sort of split the atmosphere and sort of made me realize that's the first freaking person I've heard all night who has been complaining in a tone that sounds like mine right now. Generally unpleasant, and you don't need to know the language to know that they were not happy and that they were visible about it. And I think the takeaway from that is that we could probably keep that to our private life. We should maybe try to maintain the harmony of others around us. We don't realize so much that what we say impacts who we're talking to, and it also impacts the bystanders around us. Words are powerful. Words have consequences. Words have impact, and they hurt people. So whether you say them directly to a person or whether someone overhears it, it disturbs the harmony of everything. And maybe that's cool. Maybe you think like, well, I don't care about the harmony because I'm just going to do my own thing. And there's a certain sentiment of society that believes in that. But I think that's bullshit. I think we need to get things back together, and we need to be somewhat decent again. I think there was a time when the United States was like that, was more decent, and that people kept things to each other more in private. I don't know. Maybe it's like the good old days or something. But I think it's something we could certainly learn from the Japanese. So I'll leave you with that. Yeah, that was the last point that I remember, that people seem to enjoy themselves more in public, even if it's just a facade, even if it's just suppressing their true feelings. It at least maintains the appearance of civility and pleasantness that everyone around them doesn't get disturbed by. I like that, right? We need more of that. And I don't want the only pissy people walking by the Kamogawa to be some Americans who are bitching about some of their problems or something. You know, can't we just enjoy the walk, really? And that's probably a lesson to be learned in life generally. try to just enjoy the walk. So I gotta learn that myself, maybe. So this video is quite long. Apologize, but I hope it was useful. Once again, like, I listed all these things out here, so you don't have to like watch me blabbing on about it, but I have some opinions about it, obviously. And yeah, I thought today was a good time because actually it was hard getting out of bed this morning because yeah, I just was thinking about Japan again, thinking of Kyoto, and wishing I was there. I really enjoyed it. I hope I can go back, and As I said before, I'm not completely mental or deluded. You can see my other video for bad things about Japan, which there are plenty of, but for all these good reasons and more, I really miss Japan, Kyoto especially. Um, I think there's a lot to learn from them, and I think that it wouldn't be a bad place to go spend some more time, at least visiting. I don't know about living there permanently, but oh, I'd love to go visit again. And I hope you will too, because they need the tourists. Although I think tourism is probably coming back up to speed since the tsunami. People are freaked out about the nuclear crisis and everything. That's only really if you go to Fukushima or maybe eat food that's from Fukushima. So don't do those things. Maybe indirectly support those affected regions. But if you want to go visit, Tokyo is perfectly safe. And Kyoto is even safer. And probably Osaka, Nagasaki, Hiroshima, all those places are probably even more safe. So yeah, no reason to let that stop you from going. Certainly. So yeah, I hope that helped. There's a lot there's a lot I like about Japan. So I hope you go and discover the things you like. Oh, take care. Goodbye.